Hello, my name is Kate McMahon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm very excited to have the Town of Yarmouth Public Works officials with us today to talk about a subject which is important to all of us across the Cape, which is water. So if I may, I'd like to introduce Jeff Colby, DPW Director of Town of Yarmouth. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
And Lori Rosala. And Lori is the Superintendent of Water and Wastewater.
Yes.
Cape-wide, we've been talking about water and the importance and some adjustment that we have to make regarding a lot of things. Capacity, pollution, and we're going to talk a little bit about what the Town of Yarmouth is looking at presenting to the public as well as the Select Board. So if we can start with you, Jeff, can you talk a little bit, give us an overview of what is going on with water in the Town of Yarmouth?
Yeah, absolutely. The Town of Yarmouth is looking to take steps to protect our critical sole source aquifer that all communities share, but certainly Yarmouth has a responsibility in that we have 24 wells that pull water out of the ground to provide clean drinking water to our population in Yarmouth. And so we're looking to get the message out that that needs to be protected and conserved. So we're in the process of developing a water conservation plan for the community. It is the first one for the Town of Yarmouth. Many communities and some of our neighboring communities have had water conservation plans for a number of years, but this will be a new process for the Town of Yarmouth. It is something that DEP will require when we update our water withdrawal permit, which we expect to do in the very near future. Mm-hmm. So it's critical from those standpoints.
Great. And we have quite a few demands on water as well, not only in the town, but Cape-wide, because we have a capacity or demand because of our changing population during the seasons. How does that impact the decisions that you all are going to recommend?
Oh, absolutely, yes. As everyone is aware, we have a large influx of visitors and seasonal residents that come to the Cape in a pretty limited time period of the summer, and that increases the amount of water demands on our system. Certainly our capacity in the wintertime is not particularly challenged. As I mentioned, with the 24 wells we have, we can keep up with that pretty easily. But we need most of our supplies working in order to keep up with that summer demand. And so that's really where the concern is. And we also have 4 of our wells that are currently offline for contaminant issues, emerging contaminants. And because of that, it really limits what we can pump and what we can provide. In fact, one of those wells is our largest producer of water. So that's where our concern is. And we're also concerned about the volume that we can pump because of the issues related to the amount of precipitation and what exists within the groundwater for us to withdraw.
Right. Single source aquifer, we all share it.
Absolutely.
Hopefully we won't be looking at a drought this summer.
Right. Well, that's the other concern. We've just come through a period of time and we're towards the end of that now where we expect to recharge our aquifer. The months of certainly the winter months and early into the spring is critical to make sure we have appropriate amount of precipitation, whether it's in snow or rainfall. And we just have not had that over the last couple of months. We're certainly in a water deficit. We expect to average around 4 inches of rain each month of the last few months, and that just hasn't happened. We've had some rain, but it's been more superficial. It hasn't really been a good soaking rain that we need to recharge the aquifer.
Great. So you mentioned emerging contaminants, and I would like to turn a couple questions over to Lori in regards to those wellheads that the wells that you're unable to use right now. What are you seeing in those wells that makes it so that you can't pump from those?
So in April of 2021, we started testing for a group of contaminants called PFAS. It's a large group of contaminants, and they include most anything that is fireproof, waterproof, and it's everywhere. It's in a lot of consumer products, also in firefighting foam. So we were required to test for that starting last April, and by the end of the year, we had 3 wells that we had to shut off because they reached the limit of 20 parts per trillion. So those 3 wells constitute about 1 million gallons a day of water that we're losing, that we can't run because we don't want to obviously be putting that out to our customers. So we've looked at several options for regaining that capacity, including building new treatment at those facilities, possibly getting that 4th well that Jeff mentioned. Our largest producer has been off for PCE, but it's looking like that plume may have passed, so maybe we'll be able to turn that back on. But conservation would be the quickest and obviously least upfront expense that we could get done this summer. The other alternatives would take time and money, and wouldn't likely help us this summer.
Right.
So that's what's making that important, that we push the water conservation plan right now, in addition to the drought conditions that Jeff just mentioned.
That's great. Now, you mentioned the 4th well that Jeff mentioned. It's contaminated with PCE.
Yes.
And that's different than PFAS.
Yes.
And how so?
PCE was found in that well back in 2013, so it's been off for that. I believe that chemical is used potentially in dry cleaning.
Okay.
It's more of, it seems like it was just one small plume that may have passed, just based on some testing of monitoring wells around that well. So we are getting that well working again and taking samples, and we've just started to get some of those results back, and they're looking promising. So we may be able to get that well up and running again, hopefully this year.
But you mentioned a couple really good points, that the least expensive and quickest way to address this is conservation and keeping our fingers crossed for more rain.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, I understand that this presentation is very important, obviously, and there's going to be a public hearing later in the month to share this with the residents of the town of Yarmouth.
Yes, absolutely. So we've had some discussions about this process with the Board of Selectmen, which are also serve in Yarmouth as the water commissioners, so they have responsibility for the water supply and its protection. And we have got to the point where they're comfortable with these recommendations that we're making about water conservation, but they want to get public input. They'd like to hear from people, and so the meeting on June 21st is billed as a public hearing, so we can get input from the public, both leading up to that meeting as well as at that meeting, about these conservation measures and their input, concerns, or support for those measures.
That's great. Wonderful. And where will that meeting be held?
It'll be held at the Selectmen's meeting room in the downstairs of Town Hall at 6 p.m.
Great. And if viewers would like to get more information in advance, where can we point them to?
There's a website that's been set up for this particular element. So if you take a look at the Town of Yarmouth website, there's a link to a conservation page. You can also reach out to the Water Division, and Lori's happy to talk with anybody about the detailed questions or provide more information if needed. I think that's about it. It's just important to remind people of that sole source aquifer that we talked about, that we're all really in this together. It's not just a Yarmouth issue or a Barnstable issue or a Dennis issue. It's really a Cape issue, and we all share that same source for drinking water, and it's important to recognize our role in that and our potential impact if we don't safeguard that resource.
Excellent point. Excellent point. Well, I appreciate having you both here today. Thanks for coming in, and hope to see you back in the studio soon.
Great. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. And again, my name is Kate McMahon. Thanks for joining us today, talking about a very important subject on the Cape, water. And in particular, we had officials from DPW in the town of Yarmouth here to share what they are looking at for conservation of our single source aquifer in the near future. Until next time, thank you.